The Building Brands podcast is dedicated to exploring the journeys of industry leaders who have successfully built a brand. Join me, Robert Royer, president of Building Brands Marketing, and an entrepreneur who has successfully scaled multiple brands as we dive deep into the strategies, challenges, and insights that have shaped the success of industry leaders and provide you with the resources you need to do the same. Building Brands Marketing is a full-service marketing agency specializing in crafting customized marketing strategies for service-based businesses with a creative powerhouse to drive real results. Welcome to the Building Brands Podcast. Welcome to the Legal Leader series of the Building Brands Podcast. Today, I'm joined by Shannon Pawley, owner and attorney with the Estate and Asset Protection Law Firm. Welcome, Shannon.
Thank you.
So let's start simple. What inspired you to start your own business, and how did you develop your brand identity with your firm?
Okay, I think that as with most people's story, it usually starts within your immediate family. I am the youngest daughter of my parents. They had two children, and a lot of people make the comment that my mom spit, and there I was. My mom, a very fiercely independent and driven woman. She had both grit as well as kind of like the harmonious interactions with people where you would think they'd be opposites, but they're actually together. And so through that independence, through that leadership, through that drive that was installed in me through my parents, specifically my mom, I would definitely say that's what started me down the course of not only being a business owner, but being a person that is passionate. Now, within this area of law, I would definitely emphasize that my passion started probably back in high school and college, where I was a nursing home volunteer. That's where I'd see the issue, the haves and the have-nots. I saw the people that had their plans, they had their advocates, they had active family engagement. But then I saw the other end. I saw people in a crisis situation, people that may have been solo seniors, even worse, those that may have been silenced by mind or body. Definite lasting handprint on my heart. But then let's fast forward it to about 12 years ago. My family has a genetic predisposition to vascular dementia. My grandmother died of vascular dementia, or the side effects. My mother was actually the caregiver. Then my mother was also the caregiver for my aunt. She was part of the caregiving group. And about 12 years ago, my mother got diagnosed with vascular dementia. And during that time, I saw the cascading kaleidoscope of emotions come into her. Not only did she understand what's going to happen to her with the course of that disease, that diagnosis, by seeing it within her grandmother, within her sister, but she had a different perspective also. She knew what was in for us as the family caregivers. Now, it was at that point, about 12 years ago, I was about halfway into my current legal career, that I realized how therapeutic estate planning is. Here's my mother. She is being betrayed by mind and body. Feeling every bit of independence and control is being taken away from her, and she has no ability to halt it. But through estate planning, we were able to, and once again, this was estate planning not done by me, but done by a Virginia attorney. But we got to see how it gave her back her control, gave her back that independent thoughts and voice. It made her be able to state what she wanted and how she wanted it, so that when she was subsequently silenced by the vascular dementia, it was about 5 years ago, she didn't recognize me. About 3 years ago, she became nonverbal. We could still promote her best interests and her independent thoughts and wishes. That actually carried all the way through to how she wanted her terminal treatment plan to be, how she wanted to have comfort care at the end, how she wanted to be surrounded by family, how she wanted to be engaged in the stories. And this is still kind of raw because my mother did just pass on July 3rd of this month.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Thank you. But what I can tell you is my mother has always been the teacher to me. She taught me how to be not only a better caregiver, but a better attorney, to understanding both sides, all the way down to her final moments right before transition. Because we were doing everything she'd expressed that she wanted to have in those moments. And while I've been around people when they have transitioned, when it's your loved one, you start having like these actors' nightmares of worst case scenario. But it couldn't have been more beautiful. I emphasize, me and my cousin were sitting there, we're sharing stories, we're talking. Even though my mother had not opened her eyes for almost a week, I would see her mouth periodically move, almost as though she was trying to actively engage with us. I watched her from having frantic breath to the soothing breath until she ultimately transitioned. And what I emphasize is what I learned through that. And I said, my mother's always teaching me. She's still teaching me, even though she's already transitioned. But I learned that estate planning, it's not a one and done, and it's not documents. Estate planning is relationships with an instruction manual. And that's your estate planning. That's what I've learned. That's why this is a passion for me, not a profession. And I'm
Hmm.
passionate about what I do. I'm passionate to help not only the individual, but also the family. Because once again, like I said, those are your instructions to carry out to best support that person's quality of care, quality of life, and legacy. Long-winded
Yeah,
answer, but to explain exactly why I do what I do.
absolutely. Well, I can feel that passion, that emotion, and kind of that personal aspect to what you do for a living, and that shines through. And so I really like that because a lot of times that will draw into your marketing and your communication strategy as well. Which I'm curious, on that note, what marketing strategies do you deploy in order to grow your business currently? And how does that personal emotion that's very involved in what you do, obviously, intertwine into that marketing message?
So currently, I would say that I've got four main avenues that I go down with my marketing. First is since 2020, I have done weekly webinars every Thursday, 1 o'clock. Topics change each week. Now,
Congrats.
the first comment that happens with that one is, well, don't you have nobody showing up? Here's my comment. If I had nobody showing up, I would have stopped a long time ago. But I still, doing this now going on 5 years, I still have anything between 10 to like almost 60 people showing up, depending on the topic each week. Secondly,
Congratulations.
I do live in-person workshops. As a matter of fact, that's what I was doing immediately before our podcast today. And that's an environment that's a little bit different than the webinar. The webinar, I'm not having I'm having interaction via chat, but not that face-to-face connection. And you get
Yeah.
that through those live in-persons. Those are the people that are thriving for the relationship, that they're making that firm step to come out to meet with me. In addition, I'm very, very active in both doing blogs, but also I do Ask the Expert articles for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, talking about estate planning issues with people as we age in Atlanta. And lastly, I am both the sponsor and the only attorney that is on the AJC's Aging in Atlanta panel. And this is where I sit with other professionals to help people to age in a beautiful, well-structured manner as much as you want it to be. And in there, where my workshops, I'm usually speaking to between 50 to 20 people because I think that's the sweet spot of connection, because I'm a storyteller and I'm a connector, and that's my perfect number. But here's my other comment too. I can still engage a room of like 250 to 300 people, which is what I have with my AJC events, which then breaks down to those people want to have more. So they come to a breakout session with me there, which then breaks out to them now coming to my weekly webinars, which then breaks down to them wanting to come one more time to physically meet with me in a more intimate environment until finally we have it to where after that fifth, sixth, seventh touch, they're ready to come and actually engage one-on-one with us. So that's my current marketing avenues and strategy. Now, one thing I've always stated that I would like to learn a little bit more about, that I'm starting to run out of hours in the day, is something like what you're doing, the podcast idea, so that people have the ability to come back in at their leisure. But my substitute for that is having replays of my webinars at present.
Yeah, absolutely. Content, content, content. You're doing a lot of it. You're doing really well. I really applaud you. You have a really sophisticated content marketing strategy, better than many service-based business owners and law firms. And so you're doing great. One thing that I think you do really well is obvious, well, obviously to me, based on the show thus far, you're very passionate and personally connected to what you do. The
Yes.
catch, the catch question a lot of times is, hey, should I be the face of the brand, or should I really be more involved in the operations, less focused on that, where that kind of takes up more of your time? And I think it's not like a black and white answer. I think it all depends on the dynamics of the business, the logistics of the personnel. In your case, having that personal emotion that comes through in storytelling when you talk about what you do, I think it makes more sense to you for you to be front and center the way that you are. And that's the right prioritization. There's some people that might be more introverted, maybe not as good of communicators. Maybe they, excel more in the logistics, the operational side of the business, where maybe that's not appropriate for them. These are the questions that people have to ask. And I want to circle back around though to some of your content pieces, because I think you're doing a fantastic job with your content marketing strategy. I'm curious. So you have a webinar, may have 5 people, may have 10 people, may have 60 people show up. You speak on a topic. You obviously establish some thought leadership similar to this show. Answer a couple questions maybe from the chat box. Webinar ends. What happens at that point to continue to drive the client through the prospect funnel?
So first of all, I have a pre-event drip campaign, email drip campaign that they receive. And also, usually 2/3 of the way through my webinar presentation, I do my call to action. The call to action is for them to schedule a complimentary, no cost to them, 15-minute strategy session for a one-on-one conversation with one of my non-attorney team members. Then, of course, the day before, I always have somebody personally call. And the day after, we personally call to either say, thank you for attending, or we missed you. Did you get the replay? And oh yeah, by the way, like what Attorney Pawley always says, you don't want to talk about your personal intimate details in a public forum. But if this has inspired you to want to be more detailed with your personal facts, let me schedule that complimentary strategy session for you so that you don't even have to follow that book now button, for example. So that's how we handle it with the seminars. And then, of course, we concluded, they say, well, no, I don't want to do a strategy session at this time. Well, wonderful. Would you like for me to register you for next week's webinar? It's on this topic. And a lot of times they'll say, yeah. And then we register from the next, and then it's a wash, rinse, repeat.
Excellent. So what if they say no? Are there any nurturing aspects that happen afterwards to continue to try to nurture that lead, even if they take no further action at that point?
Yes. We also have a different drip campaign for when a person registers, I put them onto my CRM as a lead. And when we have them on as a lead, we start to see, for example, somebody from a seminar, well, they're obviously interested in Medicaid because they came to the Medicaid presentation. So then they go down a Medicaid drip campaign. The Medicaid drip campaign is going to be emails because they usually don't have an address at this time. So it's going to be an email and a phone. But the email is day 1, day 3, day 5, day 7, day 15, day 30, day 90, day 180 is how I am currently doing my drip campaign. Because of course I want more while they're hot, but I don't want to be forgotten as time passes on. Now, when I get to a point that I've actually had them come in for a consultation with me and they don't convert, now I have an address usually for them, and I add a letter campaign into that. The other thing is I'm talking to people will very often say, for example, hey, you came to a caregiver. Are you aware that Attorney Pawley has a free book download on the website? How about if I give you the link to that so you can download that book? Or it'll be one of those, hey, Attorney Pawley is really prominent in working in the Metro Atlanta area, and she has this AJC event happening where you can see her, but other cross-sectional passionate individuals that you may want to join. So I often refer to my team that's doing the follow-up. They're concierge. They're concierge at the hotel. Concierge at the hotel, they are forever going to try to find out how they can help you and what they can give to you. But they're always going to say, hi there, Miss Pawley. It is so great to see you again. Hopefully things are going well. I know when you last spoke, you said your dog was ill. How's your dog doing? Because we're always writing down little personal notes or little
Yeah.
tidbits. It is amazing how excited they get when you ask them about their vacation, their dog, their grandchild, because they know you've listened. And that to me is something that is lost by many people. They're so busy pushing the product, pushing the service, they don't listen and they
You
don't respond back to the person intimately with what they have shared.
that's exactly right, Shannon. I couldn't have said it better myself. And you're in a consultative business, in a consultative role. How are you supposed to be the strongest consultant if you're not actively listening to the problems that you're providing the customized or tailored solutions to? So like that's such a critical component. And I think that a lot of times when we think about marketing, we think about demand generation and lead generation, to ultimately getting a lead across the plate. And we forget about that marketing continues to happen after they become a client. That there's a
100%.
continued rapport and relationship that has to be refined, some cases restored, many cases elevated. And that's all part of marketing, you know? Uh,
100%.
Sometimes people they forget about that, and with service-based entities it's so critical because there's more of a relationship component intertwined compared to if you're just selling widgets online. Now I'm curious, you're doing a very strong content marketing strategy, you have a really robust middle of funnel, bottom of funnel strategy. Let's talk top of funnel for a second. As far as getting people to the webinars and things like that, are you running any Google ads, Bing ads, anything of that
I'm
nature in the
doing
paid search space?
I'm doing Google local sourced ads.
Okay.
And also for my in-person web workshops, I am using one of my vendors that does my Facebook advertising. And it's hit or miss. What I will have to say, the event that I just did, my 10 o'clock session only had 2 open seats. My 1 o'clock session, we had to bring in 4 extra seats because the room got full. And that's great. And I noticed that I cross promoted it differently because I guess that's my other thing with myself is I'm not going to be a one and done when it comes to strategy.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I would have been one and done the first time I tried with this vendor for an in-person with Facebook ads, oh, it was abysmal. I dropped all these funds and a total of 7 people showed up between the 2 sessions. But unless we keep doing and refining and understanding and readdressing and A/B testing, it's not going to get better. I will have to say that prior to opening up my own firm, I actually was the vice president of a national law firm out of Boston. And I was there for about 16 years. And there it was B2B. And
Yeah.
so I was lost doing B2C when I ended up going into partnership and ultimately buying out my partner, her interest in the firm. Because with B2B, it's so much about massaging the relationship, massage that relationship. Where, of course, with B2C, it's make that connection quickly, make that connection quickly. But I think that's one of the reasons that you're seeing me so big about massaging relationships because that's B2B. To me, that's B2B.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm bringing that in. And I think that that's very, very beneficial. The other thing I think that is very beneficial is that my team believes in our product. They believe in the need for it. One of the things that I do with my team members, when you've been with me for a year, I'm going to do your estate plan for free
Oh
for
wow.
you and your
Yeah,
family. You know, one of the
it's
things
a
that,
great part.
oh, 100%. The other thing is I'm sitting down with people, you know, everybody has a story. And what I appreciate with my team, especially my team that is client facing, they realize that vulnerability in the storytelling is not a weakness, it is a superpower. I know going from corporate America where empathy was shunned, especially
Mm-hmm.
doing basically collections, creditor rights, that was shunned. And so for me, I had a lot of a hard time adjusting, but that's where I got into my podcast, into my personal reading development coaches, um, learning more from people like Brene Brown, you know, who is an
Mm-hmm.
amazing person that's talking about the power of being the vulnerable leader and that, vulnerability is not that weakness. Sitting down with people that help out with mindset. I will have to tell you, I think one of the reasons that I'm comfortable having, I will put in quotes here, a failed marketing strategy, but not running away from it, but keep developing it, is because of the money I've invested in myself with mindset.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's so important that 10 year ago me would have ran for the hills if it wasn't, 100% successful the first time. Well, that obviously doesn't work. I'm gone, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually talk about that quite a bit about the vulnerability can really be a very valuable leadership attribute. I used to be really scared of the vulnerability aspect. I spent a small portion in college, homeless, living couch to couch, and kind of going through some personal problems. And when I never really shared that early on in my career because I was somewhat ashamed of it and scared. And once I did, I realized it was able to make a really big impact. But also, I was able to connect with a lot of people who they looked at me in the position I was today or at that time, um, and they realized that there was more in common with us, or there was a more personal component than you could see on face value once you understood that full story. And vulnerability can be really scary when you're younger in your career, especially
Yes.
because you worry about the unknown, where when you're a little bit more established, the unknown is less concerning because you don't have as long of a ride left, let's face it. You know what I
Uh-huh.
mean? So it's I really like that. And I love what you've really shared today on the show. You've shared some really, really valuable, not just marketing components, but leadership components. The not giving up too quickly, trying things, using your failures to just boost your future success. Also, the reality is we can do the same thing twice, the same exact
Yes.
execution of what we were planning on doing from like a marketing standpoint, and the delivery of it or the message that's within it can be the thing that wins one time. And so sometimes if I have a failed marketing mechanism, I have to take a step back and I have to first ask myself, the very first thing I always ask is, did I have the right message or creative or the right deliverable? And if I believe I did, then the second thing I have to ask myself is, did I deliver it with the right way that it needs to be heard for it to really hit the value proposition of AIDA, attention, interest, desire, action, that sort of framework. So I think you've shared some really valuable stuff. Before we close out, you seem like someone who's definitely had your fair share of leadership, whether books, courses, movies. What is one leadership resource you would share with others who are listening or viewing the show?
So I think that one of the biggest things is to actually work on mindset. And this is such a staple book, but I've now read it 3 going on 4 times. And every time I read it is a brand new book for me, training me more. Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich. And at first
One of my
glance,
favorites.
oh, it's one of my favorites. It too, because when that was first introduced to me was back in like the beginning of my career. And I'm like, oh, that is such, 3 a.m. BS. Anybody could be a leader crap. But then
Yeah,
I
it
got
was.
out of my own head, read it associated, because I remember the first time I read it, what spoke most to me was, how is it that we can believe that a person, a good person, that is put into a crime-ridden, impoverished neighborhood is going to acclimate to those around them and become a person of crime? Why can we believe that? Well, we can't believe that if you surround yourself with successful people that you're going to succeed. Why can we believe the negative but not the positive? That was the biggest smack across my personal face.
Something interesting about that book. I've read it twice in my life. The first time I read it, I was not in the state of mind to really do anything productive as an output from it. The second time, I primed myself unintentionally with the book I read immediately before it, which is one of my favorite leadership books. It's a book called What Got You Here Won't Get You There by Marshall Goldsmith, I believe is the
That's a good
author.
I've read that. That's a good one.
Yeah, and after I read that, I was really juiced and fired up. And the very next book I read, which was now my second time reading it, was Think and Grow Rich, and then it clicked a lot better for me after priming myself with What Got You Here Won't Get You There. So I love that you shared that. That's also one of my favorite books, and it really did change my mindset. And I'm a huge believer in like synergistic energy and surrounding yourself with like-minded individuals
Yes.
to develop both personally and professionally. So that was great. Well, Shannon, this has been an absolute pleasure and privilege. Tell our listeners and viewers, where can they find out more about your firm online?
Okay, so our website is www.elder, ELDER, law, LAW, Georgia, GEORGIA.com. And if you go to our website, not only are you going to get a little bit more information about the services we provide, but this is also where you can see all of my blog entries, all of my articles with the AJC. You're going to see my upcoming seminars, so you can register for them. It's very education focused because I'm a child of the 70s and Schoolhouse Rock, knowledge is power. And if you have limited knowledge on this, you want to learn a bit more, knowledge is power. Start with where you can get information. And I'm very proud to say that my website is one of those places.
Absolutely. Shannon, it's been a privilege. Thanks for coming on the show. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.